One of the things that I love about the interactions that I have is I was sharing this with Betsy, my wife, this morning. The times where I've felt the most fulfilled are not when I'm learning from a rocket scientist. Like, that's super cool, and I'm very grateful for those conversations. But when someone texts me later and says, hey, when this publishes, can I get the MP3? I want to share it with my 3-year-old when they're 13. Hey, welcome back, Solar Warrior. Today's Tactical Tuesday is going to dive into something a little more emotional, a little more personal. And I'm not ashamed to tell you that, like many of you, I suffer from imposter syndrome. Yeah, you know what? So did Oprah. So did Maya Angelou. So does Barack Obama. A number of most of the folks, the leaders that you admire, think that their work just isn't good enough, that they don't deserve to be there. I'm not alone in that feeling. Neither is my friend Paula Glover. And today's conversation goes deep with Paula about how she handles imposter syndrome and the self-doubt that so often comes, frankly, with being successful. We also dig into personal branding, a little bit of self-reflection, and how to think about or handle competition. Ultimately finding confidence and clarity in work by obsessively focusing on the craftsmanship allows you to challenge your own capacity, your own capabilities. A lot of times, that causes us to be a little bit insecure about what we're putting out in the world. Paula and I also spend some time on leadership, culture, and personal accountability. So if you struggle with or aspire to lean into any of those things, today's Tactical Tuesday really is for you, my friend. Got more than 700 episodes like this. Leaders on the front lines of the clean energy transition, struggling with day-to-day challenges, but finding ways to revolutionize our energy grid. Welcome to SunCast. I look forward to hearing more from you. Let's lean in. I used to really be afraid. I used to kind of worry that folks were going to copy what I was doing. Kind of worried about what is my unique offering. And over the last few years, certainly over the last 6 to 12 months, becoming comfortable with, I have an affirmation that's right over my screen here that says, I am enough.
Yes. That's actually all of it. I have shared that fear of, particularly when you work to build something that is important to you, no matter how big or small it is, it's the thing that you built, so it's yours and you own it, and it's hard for people sometimes to understand how deeply committed you are to something that you built, whether you own it or not. When you build it, it feels like yours. And so you do worry about two things, right? Giving it to somebody who destroys it, whatever that looks like in your own head, right? No one ever really destroys it, but you can imagine it's different, and therefore we've made it this. Or somebody taking it from us.
Yes.
And I think I finally got to the place that it was like, you know what, maybe someone is going to try to take it from me, but how much energy am I spending worrying about that thing?
Yeah.
As opposed to building something that's, yes, you could try to replicate it, but you could never take it.
That's right.
And yes, feel free to replicate it. That's how awesome it is that you know what I mean? And so we're constantly, I think, working with, I am, at least, I'll talk for myself. I am constantly working on my own imposter syndrome.
Oh God.
Constantly.
Preach. I was thinking about this morning. I wondered if we would talk about this.
Yeah. Cause I'm constantly thinking
Oprah
about
Winfrey, Maya Angelou struggle with imposter syndrome.
No.
Who are we to think we're above it?
Yeah. We all, and it shows up in the craziest ways.
Yeah.
I have found for myself the two ways that I work through it is, one, as I share with you with my conversation with my friend, is, I always have a girlfriend or a male friend, doesn't even have to be a woman, but a friend who will say something to me that will kind of snap me out of it.
Yeah.
right? They'll just kind of say
Mm-hmm.
something to me like, girl, live joyfully. Like, what are you
Mm,
talking about? Right? Why are you, um, but for me, more even than that is when I am able to be authentic and share what that is for me, I all of a sudden feel better because I realize that I'm actually not the only one. And that we all are kind of struggling with it in some way, shape, or form at some point. And we just got to get tools to move forward. And, I find people who don't suffer from it, um, seem peculiar to me, but nice if you can be that self-assured. I'm just not that confident and self-assured. I'm not. I know it. I'm not. I think about my life in terms of
mm.
a series of graces and gratitudes that I have, right? That God gave me grace for this. God, I'm grateful for this. I feel gratitude. I'm lucky. But everything for me feels like something I should be thankful for. And then I get to what I worked and how I worked for it. But
Yeah.
thank you first,
Mm,
because that work created a result, oftentimes not what I thought it was going to be.
yeah.
Oftentimes working for one thing and it turning out to be something completely different and way better than anything I ever imagined.
I love chatting with you.
SunCast Media,
It
right?
always affirms me. Like SunCast Media is nothing like what I thought it would be.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
I would say that you've known me for 4 years. Uh, SunCast is probably not what you thought it would be, right?
I mean, I
I,
don't know. You
I
know what
don't
I
know.
mean?
Like most people
Like,
didn't have a thought of what it would be, and yet
right.
here I, as an entrepreneur, hold this like ideal around what people perhaps thought it would be, and am I measuring up to that? Man, the insidious nature of comparison. Oh,
Yeah. But
in
no
our
one can
lives.
create what's in your head.
Mm.
I
And
mean, I
yeah,
think
and that's
that's really where we have to get to is
the
that
secret sauce right
that
there.
it's the almost like an unfounded fear. They can't recreate you.
Mm-mm.
They
My
can create,
experiences.
right, a podcast, they can
Yeah.
create a video thing, they can have the audio, they can get a
Yeah.
great moderator, they can have wonderful people come and speak about a whole bunch of topics and they still could not recreate you
Yeah. Mm.
because that's actually the secret sauce,
Yeah. That's what I
you
was
know?
sort of bringing up in the very, like, in the very beginning of what prompted this discussion is I've become comfortable with the reality that I'm enough because no one can replace me. And in our businesses, we try to replace ourselves and realize that there's not a formula for how Nico shows up that anybody else can duplicate. So if a customer shows up requiring Nico, then either we've sold the wrong thing or Nico got to show up, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and if an interview happens because I've had the kind of emotional connection that I try to establish with our guests before I do the interview, if the interviewee shows up expecting that Nico, like I got to do my job. One of the things that I love about the interactions that I have is I was sharing this with Betsy, my wife, this morning. The times where I've felt the most fulfilled are not when I'm learning from a rocket scientist. Like, that's super cool. And I'm very grateful for those conversations. But when someone texts me later and says, hey, when this publishes, can I get the MP3? I want to share it with my 3-year-old when they're 13.
think about that. I'll share a story with you. My son, not my youngest, but younger, is going to start a job with a company here in DC. And the person he's working for is someone that I know,
Mm,
and a colleague. Um, and, I told him that this opportunity was available because I saw it on LinkedIn. This person did not
yeah.
tell me about it, but I saw it on LinkedIn and I sent it to my kid and said, hey, you're looking for something. Here's this thing, this person you've met before. If this is something you're interested in, you should probably reach out to them and go through the process. And that's kind of all I said, really, because it wouldn't have occurred to me to do more than that. But I got the loveliest note because he got the job.
Mm.
And this colleague sent me a note to say, thank you for being the parent who did not call me to tell me
Mm.
how great your kid was. Thank you for not being obnoxious, because so many people are just, they badger, they're trying to advocate for their child.
Right.
That's what we do. And she said, I appreciate that you believe that he could do it on his own without your salesmanship. And I'm writing you to tell you that he did it on his own. He showed up, as she said, he showed up the way she thought he would. He is the person that I thought I met 2 years ago. And I saw her last night and I said to her, you literally gave me the gift that I needed as a mom.
Yeah.
I said, that's the validation that I needed, that I did what I was supposed to do with my
That's
children.
amazing.
Like, it's the
Mm.
nicest thing I ever could have gotten.
Mm.
And for her, she was surprised. She's like, it wasn't a big deal. And I was like, you have no idea.
Yeah.
I said that just to have somebody tell me that my kid showed up the way that I believe he should show up, the way that I've raised him, and that they had that experience and then hired him because of that. I was like, that's the gift. I was like, I will take it and I'm good for the day. So it just these little things. But I mean, nigga, we are all our own secret sauce. And I think quite frankly, I think what happens certainly in work environments, which is really unfortunate, is that we do get into this false sense of competition with personalities, right? We're not really competing about the work. We say it's about the work, but a lot of it's about competing with the personality. This person has this bigger platform than I have. This person gets invited to more things than I get invited to. This person gets to be the keynote and I'm only going to be like all of that stuff. If we are honest with ourselves, myself included, that has something to do with it. And so
Yeah.
the competition is often not about, why is that organization doing this when I could? Sometimes it's like, why is she or he doing it when they should be coming to me? Why did you go to them? Person, not organization, instead of coming to me, person, not organization. And the Lord has given me the gift this 57th year of self-reflection so
Yeah.
that I can recognize that in my own self. And honestly, be okay with it. Like
Yeah.
sometimes, yes, I am being shady and petty. Yes, I am. And I have
Yeah,
people
we're
who
all
I will tell, I say,
competitive.
this is right. And I will say, like, I know I am being shady and I'm being petty, and I actually have no reason to say this thing. They're like, I'm just being shady. I get it. Right.
Yeah.
This is my ego talking
Yeah.
versus like, okay, so here's a real deal. Like, this is my ego talking. What my ego is going to tell you is that I'm the best or blah, 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 whatever that is. But if I were to step back and be honest, maybe what the conflict is about change, or maybe it's about difference, or maybe it's about speed or priority or about this, that, and the other. It's probably not about the person. It's about how something is being done different than maybe what I would like to see if I'm the one who's upset.
Yeah.
Right. And that, just having that kind of reflection and at least being able to be honest enough with yourself about it, I think allows you to clear space in your head so that you can deal with like all these other things that set us up. I'm hoping I'm saying what makes sense to you. I don't know.
You
I'm rambling
totally
right now,
are.
my friend.
No, it's good. It's good. It's good. I was just on the phone. I was on the phone call with a friend of mine who's been a coach for years. I'm in a mastermind with him every week, and his name is Bazul, and he's coached a bunch of folks who've written, bestseller books, and he's worked in Hollywood. And he said, I don't teach people to write. I don't coach them to write bestsellers. I don't sell a bestseller program. I sell confidence and clarity. He said each one of us has to find the thing that we do. Like there's a book that we're reading, written by a man that I have followed for years, Dan Sullivan. It's called 10X is Easier Than 2X. He also wrote a book called Who Not How. I'd recommend him to any leader.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes into in the first couple of chapters the story about Michelangelo and how he cut up dead bodies, like, which was a crime. But he wanted to know the anatomy of the body. Like he created his sculptures to be the most perfect,
Mm.
anatomically correct sculptures because he was the only artist of his time to actually study the human anatomy from the inside out. To know that when the elbow does this, the wrist does this, the finger does this, to know the distance between the hip bone and the knee bone, right? To accurately reflect that by chiseling it from granite, from marble. And he said, as when you're that obsessive about your craft, then you find the thing that makes the interaction between you and your client or your guest on your podcast or whatever it is that is so potent that not only do they identify their need for what you've got, your service, your product, whatever, but they also recognize that there's nobody else they could choose but you. And the rest of it is understanding that rejection is the key to acceptance, like getting through enough people that say no. Noah Kagan talks about this a lot. Getting through enough people that say no is the only way to get to the people that have filtered through to recognize that you are the answer to their question and their problem. Their only solution is that they work with you, that they meet with you, that they tell you their story. So that's been restorative for me to lean in and learn that.
What I've loved about working in probably the organizations people I've worked with is that people create space to have a real discussion about anything. And it's so funny. We were doing a job description, and in there at the bottom it had must have so many years experience in efficiency and such and such. And so, and I sent it back. And I said, really, do they really need to have that to do this job?
Right.
And the person said, well, no, it was just in my job description. I said, oh, okay, but do they need this? They have to have experience in energy to do this? Or do they have to have experience in membership? Or do they have to have experience in development? But is energy the thing? Yeah. And so we're constantly challenging our own selves to say, this is not necessarily honest if we say that we are XYZ, if we say we want this, that, and the other. Where is it baked in our own systems? That it doesn't show up that way, that you're saying one thing, but then everything that you want people to do actually is the antithesis of that. And it starts with little stuff in that conversation yesterday when we both thought about it, because the response was, this is what I said. I said, if we keep this in here, you do know that you and I, myself, and this other person said, we would not qualify for that job. We could not hire ourselves.
Yeah.
Let's think about what we're saying and doing. And so just that connectedness with people and being able to have those kinds of conversations that really are kind of personal, right, can be extremely, I think for me as a leader, meaningful in the kinds of decisions that I make.
Yeah. And to have that vulnerability baked into the fabric of the culture of your company is really key. That you can push back, that they can receive that. It's all part of, again, the secret sauce of how to develop a winning culture inside of a company, how to develop personal boundaries, and how to develop personal, a filter for what is right and where you have influence.
And that we all have, a role to play. I spoke at an event and I was sharing with this group about, understanding the lesson I learned about understanding the power of my words because they came from me, and how your position can give your words more power than someone who says the same exact thing, but from a different position. That was a very hard thing for me to accept, because I would want to say, but it's true. And the reality was that sometimes it doesn't matter if it's true. It does matter how you say things, and that, there is a responsibility to not only take account of what you say, but the impact of what you say.
Yeah.
And I think for many of us, we don't want to go so far as to really appreciate that our words have impact, and that sometimes we have to take responsibility for that impact. That sometimes it is my job to take responsibility for that, even if I think it's true, even if I think I was right.
Yeah.
Sometimes you still got to say, you know what, though? I could have done that differently. I could have said that differently. And just being able to, one, for me, I had a coach who pushed back on me, which is how I learned it.
Yeah.
Because when she called me out on it, I was like, that's some BS. And I was like, nah, that's BS. Where's the lie? What I said was true. I don't care, blah, blah, blah. And then as we started talking, she was like, okay, but we spent all this time about culture, and this is the environment that you say you want to create. And I need you to consider for a moment, because you're the president, how that statement lands differently than it would have had it landed from a colleague.
Yeah.
And that was a really hard lesson for me to learn, and to be able to admit, you know what, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
I actually can't say stuff like that anymore. I actually have to kind of tenor myself, because I do have this additional responsibility. And it's challenging. It's challenging to have to admit that being in charge or having power, or however like leadership, people see leadership, there's all this other stuff that, you know, if you're going to be a good person, I believe you have to care about, right? And it's not like it's in your job requirement, but I think you should care about it. If you're going to be a good leader and you want to have an impact, those kinds of things you have to care about, whether you're right or wrong, just cause, right?
Yeah.
Just cause like a parent, you wouldn't say anything to your kid, right? Or if you did say something that really was detrimental and really hurt your child, I think most parents would say, oh my God, that was not what I intended to do. Like, I'm not trying to create trauma, and I'm not trying to like this. But I'm forcefully saying whatever to get this idea to you. And as a parent, I think when you do that, and we learn so much now about, and hear so much about former trauma that adults talk about childhood, a lot of that is because we don't want to self-correct. We don't want to say, you know what? Maybe there was a better way for me to say that and get my point across, because the way that I said this actually created all these other things that were maybe not my intention, or maybe they were, but you know what? That was kind of messed up. And so let me just say sorry for saying something that's messed up, right? We apologized. I had to apologize to my husband because I was mad about something going on at work, but he was the beneficiary of my ugly emotions, right? And I did have to, at the end of the week, come to him after biting his head off for probably the 5th time, and then spitting it out and stomping it on the floor and then biting it off again. And I had to say to him, you know, you've been putting up with my mess.
Yeah.
And I need you to know that I know that this has nothing to do with you. You just happen to be the guy standing here putting up with my mess.
That's wonderful that you have that.
I didn't say it day one, though. It took me a while to actually be like, I was not being, you know, I wasn't being the way I was supposed to be.
Yeah.
You know, and then I had to say, you know, yeah, you're the person standing here. And unfortunately, because you are the guy standing here and I can let loose on you, you're getting a whole lot of stuff that has nothing to do with you.
True.
You know, and he said, I know. I said, okay, then.
It's always insightful to be able to share time with someone who's been in the trenches. As I would say, as long as you have, I mean, leading the organizations that you've led with different facets of the energy sector, and having taken on increasingly sort of visible leadership roles, being an advocate for diversity, inclusion. You know, you've got such a great story. I'm glad we have a chance to tell it. Hey, I just wanted to honor that you have spent the last 15 plus minutes with us, and I'm grateful for it. I hope that you will take a moment to show your gratitude to Paula. You can find her LinkedIn down in the description below. I also hope that you'll take some time to reflect and show gratitude for all the incredible work that you are doing. If you suffer from imposter syndrome or feel like you're just not measuring up, believe me, you are not alone. If you'd like to talk about it, especially if you are a founder or an executive leader who is wondering, am I in the right place? Where can my skills be most adaptable and most well utilized? I'm happy to chat with you. Go click on the Work with Nico button on mysuncast.com and schedule some time. I look forward to hearing from you. I also hope that you'll take some time to rate and review the podcast. That's easily done at ratethispodcast.com/SunCast. I really appreciate that you've taken the time to show up today. I hope that this was meaningful for you. It certainly is meaningful for me. Thanks as well to our sponsors who ensure that this show is free. All you got to do is pay your attention. They pay the rest. They support the bills. Go show them your love at mysuncast.com/sponsor. Remember, you are what you listen to. Thanks again for showing up, Solar Warrior. It's half the battle.